Hello, and welcome to the Product House.
Where two friends nerd out about product.
Hello, Kiet. How are you today?
I'm really good, thanks. Staying warm. It's very cold here in Melbourne.
Yeah, it's not much better in Sydney, but I can see the spring is probably coming.
Dear listeners, this is where we tell you that all points made in this podcast are personal opinions only and not associated with our work or any other organisations. We might change some details of our stories to protect the privacy of the individuals and organisations involved.
So for the audience, this time this is actually the episode we both of us really excited about. We wanted to do a live product managers case study simulations on this podcast. Because we know this is very relevant to a lot of our listeners and also ourselves at the moment. Based on the talent.com research this year, on average, a single product manager role posting in probably the data is in Sydney and Melbourne that can attract between 50 to 100 applicants. Some job can definitely attract much more. So as you know, most of the product managers interview will always come with very fun and exciting but challenges kind of activity, which is a product manager's case study. So that's why I want to get everyone prepared. So Kiet, what was one of the most memorable case study you have ever done?
Yeah, I've done a few, and I think your first is always the most memorable, right? And for me, it was I fell into product like a lot of people. So earlier on in my career, I actually didn't have to do product management interviews because product management wasn't really a known thing at the time. I'm not old enough to say that, right? So yeah, it was kind of mid-career where I did my first proper product management case study, and I definitely crashed and burned there.
What was the story there? What did you do, right or wrong?
Yeah, so it was an interview for a food delivery service, San Francisco based, and they were hiring remotely for a role in Melbourne. It was a product lead role, and it was both a combination of hubris because I'd been in the industry for so long. I was like, I know everything, and also I was like super nervous because one, it was intimidating because of the brand and the company.
Oh, do you have a lot of people like in the interview? Is like a group interview?
No, it was one-on-one, and the lady was super nice, right? And she was trying to kind of make it work for me, but I was just super nervous because it was the first time doing a product case study, and I think the way I'd failed was I knew my stuff, but then I was trying to first I'm reading up about all these structures and models you should follow online and kind of watching all these YouTube videos. I was like, oh, there's this structure I need to, and I just kind of got so bogged down by structure that it robbed me of my actual natural thinking of how to solve problems. And so I think that was the key lesson walking away from it, which is just, structures are good. It helps you structure your thinking, but don't let it get in the way of you actually being able to kind of, the old thinking fast and slow, right? And when you're so focused on following a structure, it kind of robs you from being able to be more creative in your thinking on the spot.
Some of things that you mentioned that I find it very relatable. It's about some sort of mind blank in the middle of this interview. So let's just get into it. I know that everyone's very excited around that. So I'm going to read out the case study, and also in the meantime, I'm also going to post this case study in our Reddit community as well. So the case study is about a corporate social responsibility initiative by one of the major corporations. Let's just call it Mountain AI. So they launched this CSR initiative to address the AI for employment. At the moment, every organization try to invest in AI, and then there's a lot of job displacement because of that. So they really wanted to contribute to social goods by helping displaced workers to find new paths and stay connected. So there are three key objectives they're trying to do. One is support workforce transitions and upskilling, enhance community engagements and social support, And last but not least is they really want to make sure the people feel a sense of purpose and fulfillment. So, so in these situations, I think here you are hired as a product lead. You have been asked to create a product strategy and plan to address all the objectives for Mountain AI.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. So before I guess get into the details of it, Charlotte, did you know that the healthcare industry here in Australia is worth $18 billion and it doubles every 5 years?
Oh, wow. That's really amazing.
If I kind of double click on that, it's very broad healthcare, right? And it's made up of kind of different areas, and mental health makes up about 4% of that, $700 million. Aged care is about 10 to 15% of that, which is a market of about $2 billion. So I think the problem statement and the mission which we would like to answer is to support the workforce transition of displaced call center workers in developing countries, to upskill them to support the mental and physical health of the elderly in Australia. And so there's a lot of pieces of that, and I'll kind of explain my thinking.
So it's a social impact project, and they're trying to choosing a healthcare kind of industry. It's another good course, which is I'm very, very excited to hear the answer
that's been presented. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk through the assumptions and research that I've done, and then talk about the opportunities within the overall value chain of getting an AI displaced worker through to providing care, and then talk about as a product lead, what would I do in the first 90 days as part of the kind of whole story. So in terms of the supply side of this equation and kind of supporting displaced AI workers, when I was brainstorming, the first thought that came to mind was, a couple of assumptions. One is, even though it doesn't specifically say it, the metrics doesn't really talk about money. And I've made the assumption that it may not be the primary goal, but in order for an initiative to be self-sustaining, it needs to at least pay for itself or generate some income. And also, those that are most likely to be displaced in the immediate future are customer service and call center workers. And so those people who are the largest group of people being affected are those kind of in English-speaking and developing countries, India and Philippines, as an example. And then when I did my research, there was a couple of trends that I thought were pertinent to the problem space. One was aging population in developing countries. Baby boomers is by and far the largest category, and as they get older, it becomes a huge opportunity to capture and service their needs. There's people increasingly more acceptance, and there's more innovation in kind of remote healthcare, and generally the movement of people and globalization as a trend as well. So kind of shaping those up, that's how I kind of formed the initial hypothesis of the areas of opportunity and what we would target.
That makes sense, but I would love to politely kind of challenging a little bit about the second assumption that the people with English as second language in developing country are impacted more by the AI, unless there's some science is being back. But in the real life, I do see a lot of, with the whole AI trends, I definitely see a lot of the disruption for basically across the spectrums. Like it's probably not only them, but I'm very happy for you to make an assumption that's the particular target group you wanted to focusing on.
Yeah, and this is some idealist kind of thinking, right? I think the promise of AI is to free us to do the things that add more value, and so I'm just kind of looking at in terms of service delivery, the but closest or bottom rung of the value chain, right? So broad assumptions, and maybe we can talk about biases later on as well. So when I think about, okay, what does the actual journey look like for those affected, right? Assuming I'm Maria, I'm a call center worker working for Mountain AI. I've just been told that, well, they've automated the majority of the customer service, and there's no longer a role for me. What is the future ahead, right? And marrying that up to the other end of the spectrum is it's mental and physical healthcare to the elderly. I think there's two opportunities that exist. One is hypothetically, I could be trained up to be a remote mental health care provider. I don't think something exists today, and it would be a challenge to kind of prove out whether that model works. And marrying a mental health care worker remotely to something like a subscription program for the elderly to kind of go have a mental or physical health check remotely online once a month. Maybe it's some sort of a subscription program. And then the other end of the opportunity is a kind of a path to physical care, right? So training them up to be a nurse, as an example, getting them the experience locally, and then perhaps a path to migration to provide care in Western or more developed countries.
This might be something you are going to touch in the details later, but I am curious to know, how did you find out this opportunity for this worker? How did you find out this particular kind of health suppliers? Because there's always a two side. There's a Mountain AI trying to drive the social initiative. There is a worker, and it sounds like there is another kind of opportunities like supplier on the other side. How did you find them? Who are them?
Yeah, and the truth is the complete picture hasn't been painted, right? And I'm working off a whole heap of hypotheses, and I think essentially what I've mapped out in a kind of visual map is Maria on one end and the customer who's a kind of aged care, someone who needs care on the other, and I've just kind of mapped out every step of the way. And across the two opportunities, right? And the longest value chain being how do I get Maria physically providing care to the customer, and in this case it would be her being trained up, getting experience locally, perhaps at the same time exploring the opportunity to provide that care in a remote situation, but then there's an opportunity in providing a path to migration. There's money to be made in kind of matching them up in local demand, right? I do have the advantage that I have worked in some capacity in the healthcare industry and understand, at least here in Australia, the dynamics of it, which is there's just way more demand for healthcare.
So I guess my question is the expectation for Maria after she gets reskill and train herself, and she go out to find those opportunities herself, or is there expectation for there might be something that Mountain AI and the part of this initiative, we are going to find some natural fit about the organization on the other hand to facilitate the process for them?
Yeah, and I think this is where the job of the product team is to close out the gaps of the understanding and what opportunities. So identify the opportunities and where the gaps are, and close out those gaps. So in this case, okay, there's two opportunities there. In terms of what the position that Mountain AI is, which of those opportunities are they best positioned to capture? Let's assume they are an engineering-led, product-led company with a lot of development resources. Perhaps the opportunity isn't to provide training, isn't to provide migration services, isn't to connect them into healthcare providers, right? Because they don't have any of those existing capabilities. With that assumption, I'd assume the second path, which is mental health care provided remotely, is the opportunity to capture. In this case, what we need to build out is some sort of marketplace dynamics where you can marry up people who are qualified and able to provide mental health remotely to someone who's willing to pay for that service.
And are we assuming that maybe I won't stay on this point for too long because I know they have a lot of other points to make. I guess my key question there, it might be some opportunity for us to explore a few different channels there, either for Mountain AI themselves to expanding to this very exciting health tech industry, so they will be able to actually helping displace the worker there, or maybe through some kind of industry research, we realize there might be some opportunity. People on the other side, there's a burning need for this type of skill set. So that as part of a CSR kind of process, we facilitate the process for them. So I definitely see there's an opportunity there. But yeah, we can move on from this particular point and then see.
And yeah, the truth is we have a lot of assumptions when we haven't actually done the research, right? To validate the point. What we do know, there is a huge demand.
Yeah.
In my mind, as the logical next step is as a product leader is to validate the effort it would take to close out the gaps and find out who the players are to fulfill the physical health care providing scenarios, by and large the easier one to capture because we know that demand is there. But the opposite side of that is there's already established players in the market, right? Yeah, and so it's about finding the links and finding the gaps and closing out those gaps to capture the opportunity. And could Mountain AI be a trainer provider? Could they be a migration service? Maybe, but
I hear what you mean. It means that basically there's a lot of details. You're totally right. Is that you'd identify all the key players in the ecosystem. Then the next step is to really validate what exactly is every player's kind of role there, which totally makes sense. That makes sense.
So this kind of goes to my last point, which is what's the role of the first 90 days? I think it is, well, knowing that the easier path is to, for Mountain AI, assuming they are a product technology company, validating whether we can actually create enough demand in the mental health space, because that's the easier one to service, right? They can do it from home. Whether we can actually create some sort of a remote nursing on the call subscription service. Crudely speaking, is it wellness whisperers, the equivalent of OnlyFans for nurses, or whatever it is, right? So it's validating the size of that opportunity, whether people are actually willing to pay for that, and then validating that we can actually provide the skills and upskills training.
Cool. So that's a 90-day plan. Is there any some key milestone in your 90-day plan?
No, not in the type that I've been provided. Sorry.
No.
But I think it was just highlighting, some of the key areas of validation. One, validate the size of the market and where there's a opportunity to kind of match supply and demand. Validating whether we can actually create a marketplace. And I think the marketplace dynamics is important because there's multiple supply and demand points in the whole equation. Marketplace in terms of marrying people who can provide mental health care. So, validating that they're actually qualified to do the job with people who need mental health care. And then in terms of the physical migration, physical piece, validating training needs as a marketplace. There's migration as a marketplace. There's kind of matching caregiving with care providing services as a marketplace, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that we would be in a position where we're primary care giving or providing primary healthcare services, only because it's just such a crowded space, right?
Yeah.
With so many players.
Okay, I think that makes sense. I think that's probably a good kind of place for us to unless there's any other points you wanted to make about the case study. Otherwise, I might post the case study and ask you some questions about your experience with doing this case study.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. So this is actually just a snapshot about case study. I think in real life, you probably will be giving much more longer time to do the actual research, and then you probably will have a much longer time to articulate some of your points as well. So as part of the podcast,
Thanks for clarifying
but
that.
how did you find about the experience overall, like to do, I guess, case study live in the podcast? What's it look like for you?
Yeah, like I said, it was a lot of fun, right? And there were some challenges in my mind. One was how do I kind of keep it tangible and not make it bigger than her, and linking it back to the we've got to make money part is easy. And I know for a lot of if you work in the public sector or you work for a non-for-profit, a lot of times if that's not the primary goal, and clearly in this case study it wasn't, it's much harder to articulate kind of the value and the impact. So I thought that was interesting.
That's very interesting because I don't know if you're interested to hear. I had a quick look at the case study and I give a go as well. So I actually approaching it a very, very different way. I actually target using I didn't make making money as one of the key kind of problem to solve in that scenario. But then I guess it really just to tell everyone when you're reading the same case study, you make different kind of assumption. I really like the approach how you starting with define the problem and then you literally clarify some of the key assumptions that you make there. That was pretty cool. I guess before I share a little bit about my way of approaching a case study, I'm also interested to know what other kind of challenges and learning you may have when you're approaching this case study.
Yeah, I think one thing was challenging my own personal biases, and when I thought about displaced call center workers, when I thought about healthcare, nursing, etc. Like originally, I framed the problem statement as like helping women, and I had to kind of really challenge. I think actually is the opportunity kind of, it was that kind of personal bias I had to kind of work with.
I'm glad you acknowledge that. That is definitely bias.
Yeah, totally. And then the other part is like the ethics of it, right? There's healthy cynicism that Silicon Valley thinking is always kind of trying to reinvent the bus, right? And if you thought about this whole kind of value chains cynically, it's reinventing human trafficking, right? But it's kind of the dynamics between.
In what way? Can you specify that? I was a bit lost in that one.
Yeah, and I think it's the power dynamics of this, right? And there's a lot of cases of people being exploited globally in the migration services to pay, in a lot of cases people have to pay money up front to the promise for finding work overseas for a better future, and they get kind of locked into cycles of debt, right? And I think if you were really executing this, you would really need to make sure that, particularly if you're leaning on third-party suppliers, the certain levels of ethical standards is met. But that's kind of in the execution.
Or maybe you just highlight that there's a lot of other players in your ecosystem as well. It's not as easy as just Mountain AI and like employees and potentially the healthcare provider. Maybe government actually play a really important role there. Regulations, policy, immigration agency. There's a lot of much more player in the picture. It's haven't been surfaced up yet.
Yeah, exactly. And when you say kind of governments and regulations, this is healthcare we're talking about, right? So there's layers and layers of red tape that you have to work around as well. So.
And then, but how did you find about the balancing the, I guess, telling a good story? Because you definitely trying your best to bring in some example there, trying to tell a story in the interview while resolving this problem and while sharing your thought process. How did you find this balance? Do you find it challenging?
Yeah, it is quite a good point you make, kind of related to my earlier point in the first time I kind of crashed and burned in my interviews, case study interview is, I think there's a structure of a good thinking process of product, right? And it follows who's my customer, what are the problems that we want to solve, what are the opportunities, and kind of working your way up the kind of product management fit, product market fit triangle into how you would prioritize different opportunities, right? And what are the trade-offs? But that's kind of the standard structure that most people follow. But the opposite side of that is you have to tell it in a way that's engaging and moves the message across. And so that balance between sharing your thought process and telling the story of how you resolve the problem, I think a lot of people forget about that. And so they get, myself talking personally, sometimes I get so engrossed in the problem that I forget that there's a cohesive story end to end that you need to tell. And, people don't share the same kind of mental model that you do, right? So that was
I definitely think we should do a separate session talking a little bit about your product market fit triangle and some of these mental model, because they're very, very interesting. I definitely can see your share a little bit snapshot about what it is, but then this time I think you didn't really, because going deep around describing the model itself, I definitely thinking that's probably the right choice to do, especially in the podcast scenario, because in the actual interview you might still be able to draw some pictures, show them some visual image, and when they in the like podcast scenario, when the other people couldn't see, I definitely thinking you'll find a really good balance around. Let me tell you a little bit about kind of my thought process, but let me actually tell you a story, because in what format, story is something that always kind of draw people in as well. So that was really, really cool.
Underrated skill set for product managers, and I think it makes sense. We'll probably share my visuals. I'll clean it up a little bit.
Yeah, in our future Reddit community, we should do that. So Kiet, before we probably come in later on, we wanted to do a little bit kind of share some hot tips to our people. But will you be interested to hear a little bit about my side about how I approach a case study?
Absolutely.
I won't spend too long, because I spend much less time to actually look at this case study, and but I just want to share a little bit about the different approach about what we do. So how I'm approaching it essentially is I literally start with whose problem I'm trying to solve. So I think that's the part that probably is a little bit different. So I do have a Mountain AI, which is the people who hiring us starting this initiative. I do have an employees, which is exactly the same. But for me, I actually thinking government and society play a very, very, very important role there. Because if I really thinking about root cause about these problems and why it happened in the first place, is because automation is driving efficiency. Every single organization at the moment outside is like the CEO is going everywhere and trying to talking about like Gen AI automations that we wanted to become our company strategy. So what it means is there is a big push from the organization and the transform to become this AI-driven, automation-driven organization, which means that a lot of people, human in the organization, they feel like they lose purpose, and then they feel like at least their managers and their leader feel like they don't need to work, they don't need them anymore. That's actually a huge identity crisis and mental health, and it's a society issue. It's not just an individual Mountain AI issue. It's a huge society issue. So, why I do trying to understand why Mountain AI the intent to running this organization, running to do this social impact project, it comes back to 3 points for me. So number one, I think from Mountain AI perspective, probably they wanted to contribute to the social good. It's good for their brands, good for marketing, good for PR. But number two, potentially for all the people, the employee, they are going to potentially let go or displace this worker. They probably want to turn them to become their customers in the future, because with all the people now going to the society without the income, how do we continue to get the human to continue to become the customer to consume their product? I think that is something that to thinking about. And I also assume with all the AI trends coming in, the leaders in the organization probably also worry one day AI is going to take their job away. Maybe with your assumption, they're starting from a particular group, but then this trend is a society trend. It's going to eventually roll out to everyone. So the leader might also feel a little bit scared to say, hey, what if one day they're actually coming to me? So for me, this is kind of the anchor of the problem. The key people that we're trying to solving for is a society. I define them as a society issue. I basically expand the scope a little bit. So because of that, the solution that I come in with is I feel like it need to be a more systematic change for this. So the idea I guess I come up with is maybe we really need to thinking about changing this, have a way to changing this employee to become the company stakeholder, owner in a sense. Because if we're really thinking about it, we wanted to facilitate a mindset shift about instead of AI replacing human in the workforce as a workforce, we want to start thinking about this AI is really starting working for the human in this situation. That what it means is the end outcome for that is everyone really become the owner of the company. How we do that is then that means that all the employee displaced worker, not only displaced worker, everyone in the organization should own a certain percentage of the company revenue. And then so all the times that once they've been displaced, like they literally will be able to contribute to the same company in a different way by coming up with new initiative, giving up order to the AI, and basically let AI and all these kind of automation to work as effectively as it is to helping these all the employee, everyone in the organization to come up with better idea, contribute greater goods. So that's kind of my general kind of thought process there. Of course, there's a lot of details about how they're happening. We won't go through there, but I guess just want to share a little bit kind of different approach the same kind of a case study.
Yeah, thank you. And it's very kind of idealist in your thinking.
Yeah.
And it is I guess when we talk about AI, it is the ultimate promise of what it's supposed to do, right? So,
yeah,
really interesting.
Yeah, so I have a dream. So basically, I'm at the moment I'm optimistic about this dream. But I definitely thinking to solve this problem. In my opinion, is I like how we're both approaching it. I feel like you narrow down the problem and solving the very tangible, specific problem. And then, and then for me, I just couldn't see this problem to fundamentally solve if we don't have a government, like we don't have some big player in the game to really driving this and to basically to make it really clear it's a social problem, not an individual organization problem.
Yeah, and I think the root kind of thinking is aligned, right? It's ultimately how do you ultimately what will never go away, right? There's a lot of things that AI will replace, but I think there's a service element with what people do or how we live our lives.
Exactly.
And how we interact with each other that will never go away, right?
And also potentially the creativity well, again, a lot of people will argue around now we have Dalai and now we can outsource our creativity. However, but this is the whole thing. The promise you mentioned about why we having AI is we wanted to getting them to helping us to working on something more meaningful. Then I still believe humans still have a lot of original ideas, and then maybe we should really try to facilitate for human to do a bit more kind of a creative thinking, entrepreneur type of work as part of the process.
Yeah, probably a great topic for another.
Yeah, yeah, we should have an AI specific topic because the AI product management kind of now is definitely a trend as well. But maybe just to end the current episode, what are some of the hot tips you wanted to give to people who are about to going on the case study?
Yeah, I guess I mentioned a couple of one was kind of story structure, really challenging your personal biases, make it tangible. Kind of the theme that you kind of mentioned earlier. The surprising one actually for me was ChatGPT. It's been a long time since I'd interviewed for a product role, and when I the last time I did, ChatGPT didn't exist. I use it in my day-to-day work in terms of kind of helping script things and speed things up quite a lot. But what was really handy was just the speed that you can calculate to quickly get to numbers and themes. That was quite surprising compared to in the past where you had to do kind of hours and hours of research, or even just pointing you in the right direction to do the research, right? So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds good. For my side, I think everything you say makes sense. I feel like you basically summarized most of the key points for my head as well. Probably only one thing I will add. This is for my own personal kind of interview failure stories as well, is sometimes you forgot we are actually also interviewers is also a human, and then sometimes in the room the interviewer is also someone wanting to helping you, and they have their own assumption and bias in part of this case study as well. So one thing I will actually recommend people to do is when you're presenting the case study, have a few checkpoints with the case study, validate some of the assumption problem statement early on with the interviewers, and try to have that interaction. Make sure what you say connect with the interviewer very early on before we jump into the solution mode. Because for case study it's extremely harder. It's harder than some of the Q&A part. Before Q&A part, you will have a natural conversation flow. But for case study, it's very, very easy to become a huge presentations, and then almost like agile development process, like you don't have a lot of, like you want to have as many checkpoints to make sure you are giving the right answer along the way as possible, instead of to just a big lump sum about the presentation without checking. So
yeah, that's a great mental model, right?
All right, thank you so much everyone for listening. I want to thanks Kiet for spending time to prepare for this case study, and then doing this with us in the podcast. Good luck with everyone who is going to do interview soon.
It goes to my last point, which is what's the role of the first 90 days. I think it is, well, knowing that the easier path is to for Mountain AI, assuming they are a product technology company, validating whether we can actually create enough demand in the mental health space, because that's the easier one to service, right? They can do it from home. Whether we can actually create some sort of a remote nursing on the call subscription service. Crudely speaking, is it wellness whisperers, the equivalent of OnlyFans for nurses, or whatever it is, right? So it's validating the size of that opportunity, whether people are actually willing to pay for that, and then validating that we can actually provide the skills and upskills training. No, not in the time that I've been provided. Sorry, but I think it was just highlighting, some of the key areas of validation. One, validate the size of the market, and where there's a opportunity to kind of match supply and demand. Validating whether we can actually create a marketplace, and I think the marketplace dynamics is important because there's multiple supply and demand points in the whole equation. Marketplace in terms of marrying people who can provide mental health care. So, validating that they're actually qualified to do the job, with people who need mental health care. And then in terms of the physical migration, physical piece, validating training needs as a marketplace. There's migration as a marketplace. There's kind of matching care